My name is Carla Ramsdell, and I'm a practitioner in residence here at Appalachian State University in the Physics and Astronomy department. And, I just slowly have kind of gotten into the physics of cooking and science, especially from a sustainability lens. And so it's very natural then to take this step into solar ovens, since I'm always measuring the energy to cook, and it's pretty much no energy to cook in a solar oven. So it's been a really fun application of my work. I am an engineer and spent a bunch of years in industry as an energy engineer, came into higher education as a second career, started teaching courses in energy, which seemed to make sense since that was my background, but then would throw in some food pieces here and there because I'm Italian and I also love to cook. Realized students really resonated with the food piece a whole bunch and were really interested in it. So I started kind of heading in that direction. And again, almost like everything I do has a sustainability theme to it. So then when I started talking about food and climate change, you start to think about ways to reduce the carbon footprint of our food system. So I've done research along those lines as well. And again, it just seems like, well, there's these things called solar ovens and they don't take any energy. So I just tried one. Of course, I ordered one with a grant, tried it out, saw that it really did work. One of the most popular ovens is an evacuated tube, and that solar oven came to be because the founder of one of the evacuated tube companies was installing evacuated tubes on a home for domestic hot water. So a lot of the technologies overlap for sure. So that's one line of ovens where there are these long tubes. In fact, I brought a little one just so you can see what, because evacuated tube is the one that's hardest to visualize. So this is a GoSun, but the smallest one they have. So they're definitely larger than this, but it truly is just a tube, right? And then inside the tube, you have the cooking tray. So super efficient. So that's one line of them. And there's a whole category, different diameters, different sizes, depending on the application. And then the other category would be just like a box oven. It's really simple technology, just a very well insulated box with a glass top on it and some reflectors around it so that you're kind of funneling in more solar energy than what's just hitting the oven. Those have larger volumes. So obviously the evacuated tube has a limited volume. The boxes you could bake a cake or a loaf of bread in there, but the efficiency is definitely much lower. So depending on your conditions, it may or may not be a problem. Then I'd say the third category would be what replaces a cooktop. So just a big parabolic dish, which reflects onto a skillet or something. And so you're really not in a sort of enclosure at that point. You're just cooking like you would cook over a 3-stone fire. And you're just replacing the fire with the sun. So I'd say those are the three major categories of solar cooking at this point. I think in a developed world, they are fun, right? So there's definitely this hobby element to it that's great. And if you are camping in a place that you don't have a lot of resources, that's great. They're definitely beneficial for emergency situations. So you can pasteurize water in them, you can cook in them, you can make coffee. I mean, there's some critical things you need when you don't have electricity. So I think they're maybe both most beneficial as a hobby and as an emergency prep piece of equipment. If we go to third world countries where people are deforesting to get wood for cooking stoves or using money that they need for food to buy the cooking fuels, well, then we can see that solar ovens all of a sudden have a really significant potential, really important role to play because we don't need to deforest. There's typically great solar access, and also people can then use their money to purchase the foods rather than to purchase the fuel for the foods. I mean, the limitations, again, are just in a industrialized world, we don't get home at a time that they're even terribly useful. So it's not like I'm going to go home and cook my dinner in it because it's too late. And so they're, you know, really dependent on the time of day. They're dependent on the amount of sunshine, and do you have access to unobstructed light? There are trees in the way, whatever. So, you know, they're cumbersome. There's nothing like going home and saying bake 350 start on your oven and it just gets hot. So they take patience and a desire to want to do them. I think a lot of these examples that have they're easy entry points into something bigger, right? And I think so. For a while, I was doing this research on the most efficient way to boil water. You know, it's like the most fundamental question in a kitchen. And you could question like, yeah, but is that really gonna move our needle? Like, how much energy in the world are we using boiling water? It's really not insignificant, actually. But the point is, I don't think you can then be conscientious and about how you boil water and then let that bleed through into all these other things. You're building a new house. Well, maybe you're going to think about the insulation in that house a little more. You're purchasing a car. I definitely think there's trickle down mentality that when you start with something really approachable, right, it can sort of infiltrate a lot of other things. One example I love to use, unrelated to cooking, is straws. You know, for some reason in our community, straws became a big deal like 2 years ago. There's this documentary that came in, talked about plastic straws and turtles with plastic straws stuck in their nose, and people got really passionate about not using plastic straws. Went to restaurants, asked for them to take them off. But it was an entry point. Like, straws were approachable and they were doable, and there was something I could really get my head around and see how I can personally have a reduction in this thing. But then once that is accomplished or that's moving forward, I have to think that those people then started questioning all these other single-use packaging containers that they did and try to minimize those too. So I hope solar ovens kind of falls in that same category. You know, you get one because it's fun and interesting, and then you see they really work. In fact, they work ridiculously well. The evacuated tubes, you know, on a sunny day, you have to make sure you don't burn stuff. They're just really very effective. And so how can you not then question, well, why aren't I heating my water for my house with these things so that I never have to fill my propane tank or whatever? So I think, you know, I hope they're a good segue to other technologies and just kind of infiltrating our thoughts on better ways we can do things. I'm a pretty big fan of hybrid technologies. So I wish I would say GoSun's latest, GoSun Fusion, that's what it is. The Fusion is their latest one, and it is a hybrid, and I really applaud that. I think in general, we should be looking at hybrid solutions, hybrid vehicles, for example, and even hybrid power generation. Like, I think we have too much of this mentality of an all or nothing. Like, it has to be all solar and be able to do everything I wanted to do on solar, or else I'm just going with the traditional electric or gas model. Like, I don't think it has to be that clear of a divide. Let's try to let the renewables do as much for us as it can. And then let's fill in the gaps with traditional, you know, maybe fossil fuels or whatever. It's an enormous reduction. And so I'd like to see more solar oven models that model that have, you know, that are going to grab as much sun as it can. And when there's not enough sun, you can plug it in and get the rest of what you need out of the solar resistance. I think we can look at that, you know, in our homes as well. I wish that more of our homes had photovoltaics. Is it going to get us all the way there? Maybe not, but it can get us a lot of the way there. And then our drain on the grid is much reduced, you know? And so I think in a lot of things, I wish we would maybe not do this like all or nothing mentality and say, let's do all we can do with the renewables. And then we still have this backup of the traditional mechanisms. I mean, I certainly would encourage anyone who has the resources to purchase a solar oven. Just give it a try. Like, they're great. They're fun, they're a great hobby, and they're a great way to sort of be introduced into some of the potential renewable energy strategies. And then, always I'm about looking beyond ourselves. And so if, understanding where the greatest needs are, and could solar ovens in these places be helpful for allowing people to be less food insecure because they could spend more money on the food that they're eating rather than the fuel that they need to purchase or whatever. So, I have a lot of hopes into the future, but I'm not one that says everyone has to have a solar oven and it's going to change the world. I really don't think that's true, but that doesn't mean I don't still encourage them. I think they're really fun, they're very educational, and they're nice for emergency backup plans too.